What's happening, YouTube? Oh, I haven't made a video for a minute. I've just been busy trying to, do a few little things here and there. You know how it is. But anyways, enough of that. Just wanted to make a quick video about this fight that's coming up with Keith Thurman and Sean Porter. Really good fight. Really pleased that we're here now. I haven't said anything about this fight. I've left it to the point where when the fight's actually going to take place. Those who have been subscribed to me for quite a long time would know, my thoughts about Keith Thurman. I made a video quite a while ago, expressing my feelings about Keith Thurman's, deconstructing Keith Thurman's BS. Check the video out on my playlist somewhere a few months ago now. So, probably that video sort of lays out exactly my thoughts about what how I've seen Keith Thurman so far up to this particular point. As I said in that video, Keith Thurman's fought, certain types of fighters, fighters who are quite, on the older side, and he hasn't actually fought any elite competition, what I consider to be elite, up to this point. Now he's fighting Sean Porter. It's nice to have two fighters who are actually close in ability. I'm not saying that, Keith Thurman or Sean Porter are equal in ability, because that will not be true. But Keith Thurman and Sean Porter is a very good competitive fight, and hopefully it will answer a lot of my questions that I had in that particular video that I made, and it will clarify a few things. Sean Porter, obviously a good, solid fighter. He's going to come in, with this brawling style. He's going to try and get into Keith Thurman's chest, make it as uncomfortable as possible for Keith Thurman, and try and get on the inside and pound on Keith Thurman's body. That's the tactics that Sean Porter is going to use. Sean Porter is going to probably try and switch it up a little bit, but ultimately that's his main game plan, to get into the inside and, destroy Keith Thurman's body and hopefully slow Keith Thurman down. If Keith Thurman's smart, Keith Thurman will use a lot more movement, work around with the jab and, try and, put himself in a situation where he's actually going to, cause Sean Porter more problems. Obviously, with a lot of, double jabbing, a lot of solid straight punches, and try and keep, Sean Porter at the end of his jab and create space for himself. He doesn't want to go into an inside battle with Sean Porter, because that would be stupid. But you never know with Keith Thurman. He might want to prove a few points and show that he can fight on the inside. It won't be the smartest tactics in terms of trying to fight a fight with Sean Porter in the inside, but whichever way, hopefully we get a competitive fight and then we'll answer a few questions, when it comes to Keith. But ultimately, in my opinion, I fully expect Keith Thurman, if he cannot dispatch someone of the ability of Sean Porter, with Keith Thurman having a lot more weapons in his arsenal than Sean Porter, he has a lot more tools that will give him which should give him more of an advantage if the fight is actually the way I fully see it to play out. Competitive for the first 3 rounds, then ultimately Keith Thurman pulling away with a lot more boxing ability. Keith Thurman has been talking a lot of shit for a long time, which is what he's supposed to do. That's how it is with fighters. You fully expect them to talk a lot of shit, but it's obviously time to back it up. And if Keith Thurman is so focused on KOs, that might be a mistake. You got to box first, and then if the KO happens, it happens. You've got to set it up. If you're fully focused on the KO, that is a big mistake, because obviously the other guy could counteract that thought process, and you could get KO'd yourself. But that's the way because I'm a fan, that's the way I see it. I don't think, obviously, I'm going to see a KO in this fight. If I do, great, but highly unlikely. I fully expect a unanimous decision victory for Keith Thurman. I see Keith Thurman win this fight quite convincingly, and then hopefully that will answer a few more questions for me. Now the other thing I want to talk about is the LDBC. LDBC is a great platform for discussing my boxing. I commend all the guys on the LDBC who are fully supportive of the LDBC. I'm one of them. There's a lot of guys on the LDBC who truly want to talk about boxing. Now, there's a few people outside of the LDBC who do want to talk about boxing as well. And I commend them as well. And I fully support those who actually truly want to talk about the sport. But there's a lot of guys outside of the LDBC as well who pretend to be boxing fans but have no intention of discussing the sport of boxing. I call these people fuckboys, and I'll explain why. Now, there's a lot of fuckboys who basically their whole MO is to go around people's channels, take their content from their channels, go back to their channels and start critiquing that content in a negative light because they want to justify their existence on this platform. Now, that's just fuckboyism. I couldn't give a fuck if that upsets you as an individual, because at the end of the day, if you want to go around people's channels and critique their content because you may disagree with their content, disagreeing is not the issue. It's the portraying of the negative, and then, the constant negativity where you as an individual don't have an individual independent thought in your mind because you don't have the ability to create your own content. All you do is to go around somebody else's content, take their shit, and then come back to your channel and start criticizing the content that you've watched. That's a fuckboy. That's a piece of shit. That's that's somebody. I don't want to interact with people like that, because at the end of the day, the LDBC are independent thinkers. If you are a supporter of the LDBC, you should have the ability to be an independent thinker, and then talk about the sport of boxing for what it is, a sport of boxing. If your MO is to go around constantly talking about race, because you don't have any other means of discussing boxing apart from the racial angle, then I don't want to be discussing, I don't want to be interacting with you. I don't give a fuck about what another channel is putting out. I couldn't care less. And one thing I want to make perfectly clear, because I hear this constantly, and I still hear this, which I'm quite surprised about, is all these people talking about, oh, this channel is unbiased, and that channel is biased, and that channel is unbiased. Fucking shut the fuck up about that bullshit. If that's your mindset about a biased and unbiased channel, if that's your mindset, then I don't want to interact with you. And I'll explain to you why I don't want to interact with you. YouTube itself has no unbiased channels when it comes to discussing the sport of boxing. Not one channel. And I hope you can hear me. Not one channel on YouTube can claim that they are unbiased. Not one. Every fucking channel on this shit is biased. Every channel. So when you start talking about, when you have people in the comment section talking about, oh, I like this channel because he's unbiased, that's a pussy boy. That individual is a pussy boy. I don't care who you are. You are a pussy because you are not a fan of boxing. You haven't got the ability to understand that every channel is biased. The issue, if you had the ability to process in your brain what should be happening when you listen to somebody's channel, is whether that person has the ability to be objective. I've said this before, but fuckboys still don't have the ability to process things. They don't. They are reactionary. Everything is a reaction. They haven't got the ability to create content for, that of their own independent thought, because they have no independent thought. Everything's a reaction to somebody else's thought. And I can't be dealing with fuckboys like that. I cannot be dealing with people like that. I don't deal with people like that. To me, it is quite simple. If you are an independent thinker and you provide your content, which a lot of the channels I'm subscribed to, they're independent thinkers. They're very good at actually, thinking for themselves. They're very, very good. They're not reactionary. They're not, oh, I went over to this channel and I saw this channel. No. And then constantly talking about race. Now, let me make another thing perfectly clear again so people have a full understanding. My race is... people have this thought process that we are quite subservient. I'm black. But the things that, let me make it perfectly clear to some people who may have this misunderstanding about, my race. We might be tolerant. We have a threshold, which we will take things, and let certain things slide up to a certain point. But once that point starts getting crossed, That's it. End of. No more discussion. And I explained to you, which I shouldn't have to explain to you, but I'll explain to you. You see, people who constantly allow people who are constantly using racially charged words, racial stereotypes against black people, people expect black people to just accept it. For some strange reason, that should be accepted. That's fuckboyism, because as a black person, I cannot accept when somebody starts using terms, racially charged terms, to denigrate my race. I cannot accept that. But you, being outside my race, expect me to accept it. That's not going to happen. I don't want to interact with you if you're interacting with people who have that kind of mindset, where you accept people who are using racially charged third terms to describe my race. I don't want to interact with you. I don't care who you are. I couldn't give a fuck who you are. I don't want to interact with you. No. My race is my race. I don't need to defend my race. I don't need to defend my race will be defended. It will there's not a need for me, but I'm not going to interact with you. Because if we're talking about race here, my race comes first. End of. No discussion whatsoever. I don't care who you are, but my race comes first. But we're not talking about race here. If you want to talk about boxing, fine, we can talk about boxing. Because boxing is a sport. When you start bringing race into boxing, I have a problem with you. Because at the end of the day, you shouldn't have the need to discuss about race. We know what it is. If you're a truly honest person, you should know what it is when it comes to certain races in the sport of boxing. It is what it is. Now, whether you are a fan of a certain type of fighter, that's your choice. You can be a fan of whichever fighter you want to be fans of. But if you start having a problem because somebody criticizes a fighter that you like, and they give you a reason why they criticize a fighter because it's justifiably focused on the sport of boxing, then that's entirely up to you to objectively look at what the discussion is and then make a judgment for yourself as an independent thinker. But if you haven't got an independent thought in your mind because you're reactionary, which is what some of these fuckboys do, reactionary, everything is a reaction for them, then that's entirely up to you. You, as an individual, shouldn't be using somebody else's opinion to justify your own hatred for a specific race. That's my opinion. Whichever way you take it is entirely up to you. But when it comes to my race, I will defend my race against people who are using racially charged, indecent words and, statements to try and describe my race. I will defend against that. Because at the end of the day, I couldn't give a fuck about your race. I care about mine. It's simple as that. So if we're going to keep the sport of boxing as a sport, then that's fine. That's absolutely fine. LDBC gives me the environment for me to discuss with other people who have similar thought processes to me when it comes to the sport of boxing. But when it comes to race, there's a lot of fuckboys outside of the LDBC who want to, who don't want the LDBC to succeed because people actually do want to talk about the sport of boxing. They want to create an agenda where they want to talk about other issues outside of boxing, but they claim to be boxing fans, which is a lot of bullshit, because if you're a boxing fan, you should be talking about the sport of boxing. But if you're not a boxing fan, then don't talk about the sport of boxing. Don't talk about anything to do with boxing. If you are truly a fan of boxing, you should keep it boxing. But you don't. You can't, because some of you fuckboys have to talk about racial issues. And then you also use racism as a mechanism for you to actually exist. And that's fine. That's your choice. But don't talk about the sport of boxing. I want to talk about the sport of boxing. I enjoy the fact that I say that GGG is not a great fighter. I absolutely enjoy it because I can justify it. And I don't have to use one racial, language, nothing to do with race, not one, to justify my statements about GGG. But you, as an individual, when you're talking about black people or black fighters, or you can't use any, you don't have the ability to just discuss specifically about a topic when it comes to boxing, because you don't have the ability to do so. You don't. All you do is you find some kind of a racially charged motivation that you have against certain races, specifically black people, and then you use that as your justification to try to pretend to be a boxing fan. And you also go around people's content, and then you take people's content and you critique that content. And those people, majority of the people, actually, I'll probably even say 100% of the people are actually black who make the content that you don't like. But you still go around and watch that content. You're a fuckboy. Why? Why are you watching people's stuff that you don't like? Don't watch this. Don't watch the channel. That's the point. Don't watch the channel. If somebody has blocked you, you should take the hint. Unsubscribe for them and subscribe to people that you do, who are happy to, happy for you to exist on their channel. Be sub to them. I don't want people, so at the end of the day, whatever you do on your channel is entirely up to you. But as for me, if I blocked you, don't watch my shit. It's not hard. It's not a difficult concept. At the end of the day, it is not a difficult concept to you to understand that if you are blocked from my channel, don't watch my channel. Anyway, I'm not going to make this video too long. I just wanted people because I might not get a chance to make another video. I've got so many other things I got to do. Sometimes, obviously I'll get there. If I get the opportunity, I will, I'll make more other content. But still, it is what it is. So I'm not going to say again, there are no fucking biased channels on YouTube. Not one. Every channel is biased. The question is objectivity. If you don't have the ability to understand somebody's, the objectivity of certain different people's opinions, and if you don't like somebody's opinion, unsubscribe for them. But for you to be a fuckboy and take somebody else's content and go to your channel and start critiquing somebody else's channel in a negative light because you're not happy about what they're saying, you're a fuckboy. You're a piece of shit. Simple as that. End of. There's no discussion about it. If you don't like it, unsubscribe for me. Simple as that. Peace.